Welcome everyone, Christine here with the discussion about Total War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, to talk about the Shadows That Change DLC and patch 4.0. And to talk about it from my perspective as a content creator. This is not a review. In fact, it's not necessarily to do with the DLC itself, it's more so to do with the things that we have to deal with as content creators. There's plenty of comments that you get whenever there's any kind of controversy. And it also depends on what perspective you're going to take on that controversy. If you go with the flow, if you embrace the controversy, then of course you're going to get a bunch of appreciative comments from people that agree with that, and then of course plenty of people that are going to call you out. Oh, you're just doing it for views, you're doing it for clickbait, you're just jumping on the controversy, and certainly that is part of being a YouTuber, but there's also the fact that maybe those of us that do talk about these things do care about this controversy. I've played Total War games for 20 years, almost 20 years at this point, and you can imagine I do care a great deal about this series. In fact, when I think back at it, the only games that I have played more than Total War, or the only game series I've played more than Total War, are Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft. So Blizzard strategy games and World of Warcraft itself. So as you might imagine, I do care a great deal about Total War, and as you might also imagine, I am not particularly happy with what is going on at the moment. But of course, there's always people that don't want to hear it. And I think this is the negative outcome of social media, which could have been avoided, should have been avoided, but right now, when we're talking about social media, echo chambers have been created. Like, if you go on Twitter, if you go on Facebook, if you go on YouTube, if you go on Reddit, what's happening is people don't care to listen to any kind of opinion that they disagree with. Doesn't matter if it's right, if it's wrong, that's irrelevant. If it's an opinion they disagree with, it will bother them and they'll avoid it or they'll criticize it quite heavily. And criticism is a nice word to use in this context, like let alone all the insults that will be thrown out there. And to me, this is a major disappointment with social media and the internet as it currently is, because when I started using the internet, it was a great tool to get to know a lot of things about the world, to interact with people around the world, and to have an open mind about various things. But now more and more, what I'm seeing on social media in particular is people don't want to get different perspectives. Instead, they just want to have a narrow perspective on anything. It doesn't matter if it's video games, if it's politics, if it's life in general. They just want to have that narrow perspective, as opposed to the real potential that the internet does have in terms of getting as many perspectives as possible. And look, I understand that if you care about something or you don't care about something, it is annoying to be wrong on a particular issue or to lose an argument. That is clearly something that we all have to deal with one way or another. But right now, we're certainly trending in the wrong direction when it comes to social media. Now, there was a particular comment from someone that watches my video saying the DLC isn't even out and you guys are already spoiling it for everyone. And not only have you guys been creating a ton of bad press, but now you're spoiling everything for everyone. Well, I want to talk about the spoiler aspect to begin with. Creative Assembly gives us early access, and they not only allow us, but they also actively encourage us as content creators, those of us that are part of their content creator program, to post footage on stuff. They have a community spotlight. They do want us to post footage. And it's not just from a marketing perspective for them, though obviously that is one of the most important things from their perspective, and how companies view content creators on YouTube, on Twitter, etc. They want content to be pushed out there because it helps their sales. But on top of that, it can be useful for feedback. For instance, let's talk about the cafe caravan situation. That is a major issue in patch 4.0, and Creative Assembly is going to fix it before launch. I can't go into too many details about that, or I think I can't, but they have at least stated that they are going to look at fixing that as quickly as possible. So that's something that came about, like people realized this was an issue because content creators had access to the game. They were doing videos, they were doing campaigns, and I think it was Battlesby that did a video where he, or someone else, that gained a huge amount of gold from a caravan. And then that got posted online. I noticed it, like I got a comment in one of my videos, I think it was the video talking about the cafe and changes, because I hadn't realized it. And then I did a bunch of testing on that, other people did testing on that, and we uncovered what the real issue was with that. So this is useful for getting feedback, for fixing issues even before they're coming out. So complaining about spoilers when the company itself has allowed you and pushed you to do it and wants you to do it, I think it's a bit ridiculous, really. And also, people want to watch it. Now, on the other hand, I do understand the sentiment to a large extent. Because I do feel frustrated, not just as a gamer, but also as a content creator. I do get frustrated when I see so many channels, like with Baldur's Gate, for instance, Baldur's Gate 3. The game literally comes out, and on the day it has come out, or shortly thereafter, people are already posting the ending. There's this race, if you will, to rush through the game, get that footage out as quickly as possible, because that's what a lot of people are going to watch. And we're certainly in a situation where the spoiler issue has certainly become a major one, and I dislike myself the notion that you're going to have people who are going to ignore large segments of the game, play on the easiest difficulty, do a really bad job with their playthroughs, but they just get to post the ending and make a ton of money with that. I do have a personal issue with that to an extent, the race as it is, but that's how the system works. And you're either going to play in that system and you're going to embrace that concept as a content creator, or you're going to fall behind. It's always easy to complain like, oh, why is this creator doing that? Why is that content creator doing that? It's like, we're competing against each other, and ultimately we have to make content that, one, is going to work well with the algorithm, two, people are going to watch. Not necessarily the content we want to make. That's something that I do dislike heavily about how YouTube works in this day and age, because there are plenty of videos I would like to make on various subjects, gaming, politics, you name it, but it's not worth it for me to put in the amount of effort. Now, sure, you could say, well, you don't have to make all these videos, right, to give Creative Assembly feedback. Well, it's like, I'm not their paid QA tester, to be clear on this. And if Creative Assembly and other game companies in general want me to, play their games, give them feedback and all that kind of stuff, and obviously I have to earn something from that as well to justify all the effort. Because, like, with Shadows of Change, I've done hundreds and hundreds of turns already in various campaigns for all the Legendary Lords, and even some that are not part of the DLC, and just experimenting with things, Cafe, Kislev, Tzeentch, the Changeling in particular, to see how their mechanics work. You're talking here dozens and dozens of hours of work, in fact, easily over 100 hours at this particular point, maybe 110, 20 hours according to my Steam statistics, to figure out how things are with the DLC. Just to give you an idea. That's quite a bit of effort, and that I've put in this DLC so far. Just bear in mind, keep that in mind when we're talking about these kind of things. So that's the spoiler argument from my perspective. I'm not saying the current situation is great. It's not, but we are in this era of social media where whenever something comes out, be a movie, game, book, people are going to say what's going to happen there, right? And there's going to be this race to post what's going to happen in a particular story from a story perspective. That is part of it. But at the same time, I will also argue that showing gameplay footage of a DLC is not a bad thing before it comes out, because you're looking to give people information so they can make an informed decision about what they're going to purchase, to know what they're going to purchase. I heavily dislike the notion that people should go into content blind. Like, to what extent they should know about what's going to happen, that's a different discussion. But I don't think anyone should go and read a book or watch a movie or anything like that without having any kind of idea what they're going to go into. So if something is bad and you know it's going to be bad, I think that's something that should be stated in advance. And look, maybe people play something or read a book or watch a movie and they find out that they actually like it, even though plenty of people are saying it's bad. I've certainly been through that particular situation myself as a gamer and as someone who reads lots of books, who watches movies, watches TV shows. I've certainly experienced that. So it is a balancing act, I would argue, but I think spoilers can also be incredibly useful. I also have to say that if something is very high quality, be a book, movie, TV show, or game, then spoilers don't matter. If something's good, you will still enjoy it, even if it's been quote-unquote spoiled for you. A perfect example of this, I've read the Song of Ice and Fire book series, and I started reading those books, and then I read the synopsis on the wiki, because I started reading those books in, 2010? And obviously by that point, we had a bunch of information about those books. So I read what was going to happen at the Red Wedding. Was the Red Wedding ruined for me in the chapter in the book when I read it? No. That's because the Red Wedding, as written by George R. R. Martin, is a fantastic piece of literature. I'd argue it's the best chapter in the books by George R. R. Martin. It's not because of what's happening, it's how it's happening. You will not experience the Red Wedding just by reading, oh, these guys died, right? And they died in that way. No, you have to really read through that chapter. And even just reading it on its own is a vastly superior experience to just, reading a synopsis or hearing someone say that's happening. Also, you really will experience it in a very far different way if you read the books up to this point. So I knew that when I started reading the chapter, it was going to be the Red Wedding, and it was still an incredible experience to this point. And it still is to this day. So that's my perspective, if you will, as a content creator when it comes to spoiling things, quote unquote. Now, as for the argument, and this person who made this post is not the only person saying about this. It's like, you guys have created a ton of bad press. To which I reply, we did not. Like, blaming content creators for the screw-ups of a video gaming company or any company out there is the most disingenuous, crappy argument that I've seen online. It's like, well, why are you being so negative? Why are you talking about this? We're talking about this because people are already talking about this. Content creators, believe it or not, don't necessarily want to be negative about the things they're covering. In fact, it can be it can create major issues if things are really bad with a particular title or a book, series, whatever. It doesn't matter. If all you have to talk about is negative stuff, it's ultimately not going to work out in the long term. And certainly, Creative Assembly's content creator program is built around the idea that we will give positive coverage. And I think we're seeing the limits of that content creator program because it has worked relatively well, because most of the stuff that they have released since they've adopted the current model has been fairly solid. Sure, issues, Troy in particular, but for the most part, it has worked out. But now we're seeing the biggest controversy since the launch of Rome 2. And you can't ignore it. And if you ignore it, you're going to get bunch of comments from people pissed off. Why are you covering this DLC? Why are you giving them free coverage? Why are you marketing their game for them? Because don't ignore that aspect. There are people who do that, and they're not necessarily wrong in saying that. Personally, I want to give people information on what's out there, tell them what works, what doesn't, how things are, what should have been done, etc. And I also do give feedback to Creative Assembly directly. How much they care about that, that's a different thing. Though I have to say, as a content creator, I think that the influence people think we have is far lower than it actually is. It's far lower with the community than it actually is. Like, imagine content creator going against the Reddit meta, if you will, or the wisdom of Reddit, as I'd call it. You're going to get chewed up, basically. Like, if you say something that a lot of people on Reddit disagree with, you're not going to end up in a good position, and it will hurt you in a significant fashion. So we're more reactive than you might think. And let's talk about the bad press that this DLC has received. Nothing I have stated or any content creator has stated combined comes anywhere close to what Creative Assembly themselves have done here. You want to talk about the bad press? Releasing the DLC, announcing the DLC with that price. That's the source of the bad press. Releasing that statement where they basically threaten the community. And it's not content creators that made that. It's like a lot of people on Reddit also said that. Long before any content creator stated that kind of sentiment, really. Like, a lot of people took that statement as a threat. But, content creators get, a lot of eyeballs. So it's like, oh, you're just pushing that. No, we're not really pushing it. It's already being pushed out there by a significant number of people. And And the point I'm going to get to here is you have a lot of people angry at Creative Assembly. You have a lot of bad press. You have bad decisions. And what's also really pushed the negativity towards this DLC and has pushed the recent reviews for Warhammer 3 into the overwhelmingly negative zone is the fact that not only do you have the price, not only do you have the statement, but at the same time, you had content creators with Creative Assembly's blessing, acceptance, and push, really, like, because they want us to cover this. It's not like Creative Assembly doesn't want us to cover what's in the DLC. They do. And so we have this situation where Creative Assembly wants us to release footage, people start releasing footage, and then people watching those videos, they notice, well, what's going on here? Like, there's a ton of issues that existed before haven't been fixed. There's all these problems. There's all these balancing issues. There's the lack of changes for, say, Kislev or Tsinch or even Grand Cafe. There's all these issues, and that's where things went into overdrive. So I think releasing that statement in particular, when they did, and that statement came out just minutes before the first wave of content creators, the ones that have the most exclusive access, start posting videos. And when they started posting videos and people realized what Creative Assembly had done and had not done with the DLC, people got far angrier than they were before. That's exactly what ended up happening. So that's why you get a lot of the bad press. I'm not going to apologize for doing my job. I don't think anyone should apologize for doing their job in this kind of context. I think if you want to blame someone for the current state of affairs, you got to look at Creative Assembly. They screwed up, and pretending they didn't screw up, being fanboys about it, defending them when, you know what? They themselves accept they screwed up. That's the most ridiculous situation where the people that screw up accept that they screwed up, and now you have people still defending them for what they've done. Now, what Creative Assembly does from now, that's a different discussion. I'll make a video on that subject later. I do have quite a few thoughts. I did see it coming to an extent because there was already the major price controversy with regards to Forge of the Cast Dwarfs. A lot of people disliked the price of the Forge of the Cast Dwarfs, but a lot of people were also very excited for the Forge of the Cast Dwarfs. With Shadows Change, I'm seeing the exact opposite. I'm seeing a lot of people very angry at Creative Assembly and not as many people excited for what's actually in the DLC. And I make this point because when Forge of the Cast Dwarfs was coming out and I was covering a pre-launch, the videos that I did, the ones that did the best, like I did a couple of videos on the price controversy, my perspective on that, and they did okay, but the videos that did the best were things talking about Grimgor, talking about Imrik, not even the Gas Dwarves themselves, just like how the DLC and the patch were going to affect other Legendary Lords that didn't actually get any changes to the skill line, faction effects, races, or anything like that, but still were affected in a major way just because of the terrain, and got a ton of views for that. One of the best videos I've done this entire year was actually about Imrik, believe it or not. And now with Shadows of Change, what I'm seeing is the exact opposite. People are angry. They don't want to see, they're not interested necessarily as much to see to see videos just covering the game, covering the changes. They're more so interested in just being angry at this point at Creative Assembly, given the price, given the statement, and given the changes and lack of changes that they've noticed in the DLC so far. And this is not a great thing for content creators, believe it or not, because while you might get a number of views early on for those kind of controversy videos, in the long term, it creates a lot of issues for you because, like, imagine you're a content creator that fully covers Total War. Many of the content creators that are in the CA Creator Program exclusively cover Total War. Well, imagine how their viewership is going to be a couple of weeks from now, a couple of months from now, even at the moment. And I can tell you that I'm noticing a severe decline in interest in people interested in watching Total War content just because they're fed up, ultimately, with what Creative Assembly has done. And that is a problem. That is a problem for Creative Assembly. That is a problem for content creators. And we'll see how things go forward with Thrones of Decay. That's all I had to say. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.